Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Rochester. Here, through spiritual connection in community, we listen deeply to others and ourselves. We open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. We acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door, and part of the Haudenosaunee people on whose ancestral and contemporary lands First Unitarian now stands. I am Reverend AJ. I'm excited to lead worship this morning with a whole host of folks. We've got Kim and Sarah helping out with music. We've got Paul and Lynn and Sonia, and we've got Chris as well helping out. And it takes even more. We've got our tech folks, we've got our Zoom hosts and chat hosts and chaplains and all that good stuff. And of course, all of you here in the sanctuary and joining us by Zoom online. We could not do Sunday morning without you. So thank you for being here and welcome. If you are new or newish here, please, there's, I believe, a link in the chat you can follow to get some more information, and you can stick around after the service in the Susan B. Anthony Lounge for UU 101 with Shannon, our membership coordinator. And if you are going through a hard time, or someone that you know or care about is going through a hard time, please reach out. We have chaplains. We have a chat chaplain in the chat. We have a chaplain here in the sanctuary on church on Sunday mornings. Please reach out if you're going through a hard time. We want to hear and we want to help however we can. I'm very excited for this Sunday service because it's very dear to my heart. As the assistant minister, one of really the biggest part of my job here is to support the spiritual growth and spiritual development of members and friends of First Unitarian Church here. So this Sunday morning, Pathways to Spiritual Deepening, Spiritual Development. We're going to hear from a couple different reflections from different members of the congregation and the different small groups and programs that they have been participating in as part of their own journeys of spiritual deepening, their own pathways. So I'm very excited to share those with you all, and then hopefully that will inspire some of you to get involved and get engaged, and I'll be happy to talk with anyone after the service about that. And we also have, if you've heard about our Soul Matters program, that's our biggest program for getting connected in a smaller group. We are having after the service, a little sort of after lunch at 1 p.m. In the Susan B. Anthony Lounge, or via the same Zoom link that you used to get here this morning. We're going to have a Soul Matters Learning Circle to learn a little bit more about that program. So with those announcements out of the way, and hopefully I'm not forgetting anything, please let's take a breath together as we begin worship with the lighting of our chalice. The words are up on the screen. And we're all muted on Zoom, right? Everyone's learning how to mute ourselves? All right. It's our best friend and closest enemy, technology. All right. Now please join me. May the flame we now kindle inspire us to use our power to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, and to seek liberation in the fullness of community.
Sure, it was on a second ago now, and I want it to be on. All right, hi. Hi, good morning, everybody. So welcome to Pride Weekend in Rochester. I wrote opening words Friday morning, and then yesterday happened, and I've written them and rewritten them about 15 times, so bear with me. But my Post-it matches the dress, which is clutch. And so a quick thought about yesterday and what yesterday meant to me is sort of my first open Pride weekend. To walk down Park Ave yesterday was absolutely a transcendent experience for me and for my family. We had friends in from out of town. someone from college I haven't seen, who did my makeup for me 25 years ago in college, and then did it yesterday. I hadn't seen her until it was phenomenal. It was really, really a trip. But to see friends and family and my kids' friends, and to hear my 13-year-old who was able to identify every single flag that we saw along the way. She was also, if you were there, the one holding the banner, which is her favorite thing to do in parades. And so that kind of experience is really why we come to church. And hold on, because I'll get there, because that part's coming later, the part that I already wrote. But I had to just say that because I almost broke down probably a dozen times just walking down Park Ave yesterday, because I didn't have that at their age. I've got it at 46, and that's great. But I didn't have it at their age. And I think the fact that as crazy as this world is right now, we're creating a better space for people to be different and to be themselves. And that is more powerful than I think we really even realize. And it really speaks to what we do as human beings, and then as a fellowship. So the joy of gender fluidity, this is what I wrote on Friday. The joy of gender fluidity is being able to have a freedom that I never realized that I had. That fabrics come in colors that are not black or blue, that you can wear what you want, when you want, and whatever feels right on any given day. And again, really, really a joy that I always thought, or that I never realized that other folks enjoyed too, or that I didn't have to hide, in a bag in the back of the closet. The flip side of that is that sizes are bananas. And I could walk out of here into any Kohl's, any store in America, pick up a pair of size 38 jeans, and I can be reasonably confident those are going to fit. I have dresses in my closet from size 10 to 24. They all fit okay. And isn't that why we come to church? Because there's no one-size-fits-all way to do Unitarian Universalism. There's lots of ways to do it. And you got to try it on. You got to see what fits. You got to see what looks good, what feels right, what works for you, and where you feel comfortable, and where you feel that you can contribute your piece to this greater mission of listening and opening and serving. And that's really why we're here. So welcome.
No, I guess you are right. Technology is good. Will you please join us in song, body, and spirit as we sing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit.
Will kindle one flame I'm Lynn Kelly. At school, I'm also known as Laura Kelly. Laura is my first name, but my family always called me Lynn because Mom was named Laura, and I was named after her. And you're part of my family, so I'm Lynn. I've had the wonderful experience of attending Soul Matters groups here at First Unitarian for about 8 years. Sometimes we can get so immersed in the routines of daily life that we fail to appreciate the beauty all around us and take advantage of transformative possibilities. In my monthly Soul Matters group, I get inspired to ponder life's deepest meaning and make choices that guide me to live a life in alignment with my deepest values. There's a Soul Matters packet for each season, filled with spiritual exercises and questions to ponder, which help me connect to my deepest self and expand my spiritual development. My first Soul Matters group, facilitated by Reverend Marcus Liefert, introduced me to Soul Matters, the theology of connection in which we gather in a small group to support one another and ourselves in our spiritual journeys. Soul Matters offers a safe place to honor each other with attentive listening without judgment or interruption. The Soul Matters format of deep listening, as each member shares their thoughts and experiences related to the spiritual exercises, is very powerful. At first, I was a bit uncomfortable sharing my thoughts and reflections without any interruptions or comments from members of my Soul Matters group. You see, I taught primary school for 40 years, and if I talked and didn't get any response, it would seem very odd. It helped that we developed a covenant to honor each other with attentive, non-judgmental listening and to maintain trust through confidentiality. This deep listening encouraged me to reconnect to my own inner voice and spirituality. Listening without interrupting was also very challenging for me at first. I grew up in a lively, wonderful family with 3 siblings and 2 parents who liked to discuss things, and my youngest brother, he had to raise his hand if he wanted to contribute. It's very tempting for me to respond as people reflect on our monthly themes and exercises. However, I have come to appreciate the value in holding still, to deeply listen until everyone has had a chance to share. A wonderful benefit of participating in Soul Matters is forming meaningful, supportive connections with members of my Soul Matters group. These connections have encouraged me to expand my awareness. They have provided needed support in challenging times and have guided me in living a more joyful, authentic life. A recent example is the opportunity I pursued this year as a volunteer for Keeping Our Promise. When the children of First Unitarian chose to support Keeping Our Promise as one of our greater good organizations, I was inspired to volunteer for a family of 7 who fled Afghanistan last August. During our monthly check-ins, members of my Soul Matters group share life experiences that are lifting them up or dragging them down. As I shared my experiences working with my Afghani family and the Caring Circle who are helping them settle here in Rochester, it became very clear to me that this experience has meant more to me than simply serving needs greater than my own. The family and other members of the Caring Circle provide a constant example of the growth that is possible when people are supported and encouraged. Overcoming enormous obstacles and hardships is inspiring, but even more inspiring is the love and joy this family radiates. The 4 little children are full of smiles and hugs, and they are so eager to show off everything they're learning. The adults have shown me grandmotherly concern, shared delicious food with me, and given me renewed appreciation of life's gifts. My time with this family has reminded me of the great joy in learning, growing, and developing as we journey through life. Members of my Soul Matters group also inspire me as they share their life experiences. My group has people from different backgrounds and of different ages. Learning about the challenges that they have faced and opportunities they have embraced is awe-inspiring. Their experiences help me recognize aspects of my own life that may need some adjusting in order for me to flourish as my most authentic self. I am more aware of keeping my words and actions in better alignment with my values. Their friendship and support encourages me to seize opportunities to make a positive difference. The friendships and deep connections in Soul Matters have helped me listen deeply to myself and others, encouraged me to be open to opportunities and transformation, and enhanced my own life while serving needs greater than my own.
Thanks, Lynn. So as Chris said earlier, Unitarian Universalism is not a one-size-fits-all religion. And one of the ways that we can talk about this, or that religious pluralists generally talk about this, is many paths up the same mountain. The mountaintop being that metaphorical place of spiritual enlightenment, of oneness with truth, of communion with God, or of blissful transcendence. With that in mind, as we enter our time of meditation, reflection, and prayer, I offer you this poem from Denise Levertov, a white American poet. It's called Witness. Sometimes the mountain is hidden from me in veils of cloud. Sometimes I am hidden from the mountain in veils of inattention, apathy, fatigue. When I forget or refuse to go down to the shore or a few yards up the road on a clear day to reconfirm that witnessing presence. I invite you now into a few moments of shared silence as we turn our attention back to that mountain, however shrouded it may be, whatever paths we may forge ahead of us. May we, for this moment, rest in balm. Great mystery which grounds us and surrounds us all. Divine presence known by many names and in many ways. Grant us in this hour the spaciousness to breathe, a moment to rest between all the demands of our lives. A moment to reassess, to recalibrate, to find the mountain again through the clouds, to open ourselves so that the mountain may see us again, to join one another on the many winding and intersecting paths up the mountain. The way is not always clear, and when it is, it may be rougher than we can bear. This bruised yet beautiful world that we live in can surprise us with joy and just as easily take from us mercilessly. May we listen closely to the stirrings of our own heart, as well as the melodies in others' lives. May we open to the wonder and transformation always pregnant, always possible in this strange sojourn between life and death. May we find words of courage to give and receive to and from one another, and find the ways to serve this hurting world humbly together. With all of our gratitude for the good and the possible and the not yet realized, and with all the grief for the lost, the losing, the heartache and heartbreak we must bear in order to live this thing called life, may we open to the growth of our spirits, of our minds, of our hearts, that we may grow together in harmony and symphony with one another and with all living things in this great interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. And through our living and striving together, may justice reign on this earth, and may liberation be possible in this life. May all our prayers be humble enough to ask for nothing more, and so audacious as to ask for nothing less. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be. Let us now enter into ritual to bring what is heaviest on our hearts or most present in our mind this morning and lay it on the altar of community and spirit, honoring the complexities of life, the grief, the growth, the gratitude alive in each of us. Online, you are invited to type in and share in the chat, and in the sanctuary, you are invited to arrive at one of the aisle altars and light a candle for your grief, gratitude, or growth, using the taper candle with the snuffer, using the snuffer to extinguish the final taper candle. May we now share in the ritual of community care. All that we hold in our hearts for ourselves, for each other, and for the world is now held in loving community and by the larger love which holds us all, always. May it be so. Blessed be.
Still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. Winds dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. Winds dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to see you all this morning. And those of you who are looking in from far away, too. I'm Paul Swain, and I'm speaking on behalf of First Unitarian Monday night silent meditation. I've been a regular participant for about 10 years or so. We get together currently by Zoom at 7:30 Monday evenings. We speak with each other for a little bit, have a reading, and then sit 40 minutes in silence together before we break and have another reading and a little final conversation. 40 minutes seems like a long time, but it's really a productive amount of time because it takes a while to move away from the turmoil of our everyday thinking. So it's one of the first Unitarian activities that captured my attention when I came to the church a dozen years ago. And it's remained an important personal recentering practice ever since. I have to confess a couple of things first. I'm not, doctrinally speaking, a very well-informed Buddhist. I've studied it, but not to the extent that many other people in First Unitarian Buddhist Fellowship have done. There are real scholars of Buddhism in our congregation. There are many other people who are deeply informed, and it reflects in the depth of their practice, and also in the quality of their interaction with other people, which is the point, of course. Rather, I'm a small b Buddhist that is an admirer of what the spiritual outlook teaches in many ways, except a lot of its tenets and recommendations as deeply sane and healthy, suitable medicine for what was really our tragically distracted and self-absorbed world. In particular, I subscribe to the Buddhist advice that we should test any teachings, including his own, by the data of our lived experience. The question arises, how do you collect good data? And silent meditation can actually play a big role in this. When we sit quietly, following our breathing, for example, we gradually redirect our attention away from our relentless internal monologue, dialogue, trialogue, that thing that goes on in our mind all the time. Each time we sit, we gradually practice focusing and then refocusing our attention, because you have to remind yourself, over 40 minutes, you'll remind yourself quite a number of times to get back to work. As often as we need to, but gently and without forcing anything, and certainly without arguing with ourselves. So it's really a matter of letting go of our normal internal conversational process. And gradually, our minds really do settle down. They begin to settle down, helpfully. Different and quieter wavelengths, and I think that is the right word, wavelengths, that are seated in our heart or in our folded hands or in our belly, begin to ground us. So we're moving away from something that's occurring at the top of our brain into something that really is always there, but less evident and far more deeply seated in our being. We establish healthy distance from our endless planning, evaluating, judging, and also reliving of the past, this relentless world building, which sometimes described as the story of me, endlessly reinforced. What a relief it can be to take a pause from this. It leaves us in a better state to consider the data of the world. And over time, regular practice opens our mind to a more compassionate and reasonable outlook, both toward ourselves and toward others, toward the world itself. When the world seems a little too much, and it often does, we can find grounding and serious renewal in this simple practice. So in my own experience, it's easier to maintain good practice in the company of others. I have many friends who are more disciplined, who meditate very well every day. But by mutual presence, we do help each other along. We work individually, but in common group presence. We're not thinking about each other, but there's a bond of being together that truly exists. And there's a strange and wonderful bond with one another that seems to develop over time. So I can think back of many people that I've meditated with over the last decade, and I feel a terrific, deep fondness for these people, even though it has nothing to do with who they are and what they think. It has to do with as we are here in a congregation, of being with one another, of sharing the electricity in the room without judging one another, without even focusing on one another, allowing us to kind of seep subliminally into one another. It's a really interesting phenomenon. We catch glimpses of a larger, saner, and more peaceful world. We enjoy refreshing moments of distance from the tyranny of our habitual mental constructs, and including the story of me. And so the effort really is well rewarded. And in someone else's words, I'm going to read we have short readings that we use at the beginning and the ending of silent meditation. And this one's from a writing called Grounded by the Earth by a writer named Anne Carolyn Klein. She writes, "We clothe ourselves in stories about the past and future. These can be very comfortable clothes to wear, because in them we know just what to do. But in all that doing, am I losing some of my being? Am I losing some of what I actually am with all that stuff? No matter what else we do in meditation, just by the fact of sitting down and giving up the task with which we normally clothe ourselves, we are challenging our very senses of self. We're testing the possibility of giving up those roles and just being what we actually are. And I'll say further that we open ourselves to moments of very quiet and profound meaning. There's those times when you look, you get up early in the morning, your head is still clear, maybe you slept well, I get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock with my dog some mornings, go out in the backyard. The world is just waking up. The first birds are starting to chirp. And you look up among the trees, and you really are part of the world in a way that doesn't usually occur in daily life. And to do this, we need to quiet down. And these pieces of meaning are the ones we carry and which sustain us and which we value for a good reason. So that's why I do this and why others in our group sustain this practice. Want to join us Monday night, 7:30. We do it by Zoom. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. So we did have another congregant lined up to speak about their experiences with UU Wellspring, but as happens nowadays, as can happen nowadays, they got COVID this week and were unable to come at the last minute. And as I ran out of time to find another speaker, I remembered, wait a minute, I did UU Wellspring. Now, I didn't do it in a group here with First Unitarian folks, but as it happens, it was actually a group online, sort of national in scope, where folks were coming from, but it was in fact facilitated by Reverend Libby Moore, who recently moved away from here but is beloved by many in this community. So this was a cohort for UU religious professionals. I participated in the year before I moved here to Rochester. Since it was my first time taking UU Wellspring, which is similar in some format to Soul Matters, where there's a group of people coming together and you're listening deeply to one another and experiencing your lives together. But it's sort of a more intense version. It's twice a month or every other week that it meets, and there's a lot more homework and reading that's done to really prepare the soil and the grist for the mill for that. And there's different curriculums that they offer. And the first one, if you haven't taken it before, like was my case going into this, you have to take the Sources curriculum, which is, I haven't heard anyone ever complain about that because it's such a great way to get in. And if you're not familiar with the 6 Unitarian Universalist sources of our faith, this is a great way to get to know and deepen in them, because it's a curriculum structured around these sources. It's a year-long journey into them, into the spiritual deepening and personal discernment of what are the sources of my own personal faith and belief? What are the sources of Unitarian Universalism? How am I challenged, comforted, and inspired by each of these 6 sources? It is quite the commitment, but if you're able to make it, it's an incredibly rewarding deepening of Unitarian Universalism and one's own spirituality. But you may be thinking to yourself, based on the description I've given, that, well, I've got so much going on, I could not possibly make the time for something that intense to really give it the attention it deserves. And on the one hand, you may be right. We do ask that you undertake serious discernment to see if you have the time and the capacity for this, for UU Wellsprings. But on the other hand, I warn you not to write it off too quickly. As I said, the year that I took this UU Wellsprings, I participated in this cohort, was the year before moving here from California. And it was the year that my wife Ada and I realized that we had to leave the smoke-filled valleys of California and return to the east. It was the first full year of pandemic. Everything was still completely virtual. It was a very stressful and difficult time for everybody in the world, and personally with that transition, realizing that we had to make that move and that transition, and then going into the search process for ministerial callings and jobs was very intense and stressful. And ultimately, it ended very well, very happily. I pinch myself every day. I can't imagine. I'm excited to be here in Rochester and be here at First Unitarian. But what I'm getting at was that it was a very busy and very stressful year. And reflecting on my time doing Wellspring that year, it reminds me of the saying from the Zen tradition that goes something like this. You should sit in meditation for at least 20 minutes each day. And if you're too busy to do that, you should do it for an hour. Having 2 hours set aside each week, each week, 2 hours set aside every 2 weeks to connect with others in this small group, to dive into the sources of our shared faith and our personal, continually living faiths was such a blessing in that time. And rather than being an additional tax on my time and energy, it was more of a, well, it was a wellspring that filled me up. And it made it possible for me to survive and thrive and make it through to the other side of that difficult year. I'm deeply grateful to UU Wellspring for having been there for me in a difficult time of great discernment and tribulation in my life. And it is a commitment, but the rewards are commensurate, and like all of the groups, all of the opportunities here, you meet with others, you develop relationships that can last a lifetime.
Each week, members and friends generously contribute to our offering, which helps to sustain and grow our community. This collection supports the work and witness of our church, and each week, we give half this collection to a partner organization helping those in need and working to create a more just and loving world. This week, our plate is shared with the incredible humans at the Avenue Black Box Theater, where the cool kids come to play. An inclusive, fully accessible queer space where social justice and art disciplines converge to create dynamic stage productions, installations, and live art-making events. Your patronage supports collaborations that elevate voices from the margins, make space for their art, and real-time community transformation. Please give as you are willing and able, either in the baskets being passed or online at rochesterunitarian.org/donate. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sonia, and I would like to tell you about my experience with adult spiritual development at First Unitarian, which includes participating in Beloved Conversations, UU School Partnership Racial Justice Training by Melissa Parrish, R3, which stands for Race, Racism, and Relationship, as well as being a facilitator of the Anti-Racism Circle for White Folks with Pamela Pollack. Prior to attending these workshops, I remember reading the 8th principle and asking myself, what am I doing to dismantle racism and other oppressions in myself and the institutions I am involved with? Because I did not know what to do when I noticed acts of white supremacy, I would stand there feeling uncomfortable, doing nothing. But here is the thing. Nothing will change if nobody says or does anything about it. Therefore, because I wanted to understand white supremacy better and develop my skills to dismantle racism, I made it a priority to attend anti-racism programming at First Unitarian. Now, when someone says something that is racist, I get a feeling of tightness and hurt in my belly, and I recognize it for what it is, a signal of white supremacy, racism, or oppression. For example, on Mother's Day, I was talking to a friend in her community garden plot. Her husband was helping put up a fence for Mother's Day and made the comment that his wife was a slave driver. I felt the tightness and hurt in my belly. I took a breath and became curious and asked her husband, "Did you have a choice to come and do this work for your wife?" He responded, "Yes." I then said something like, "This is not slavery, so please do not use the word slave driver." The word slave driver resulted in a somatic or body response because in this context, it minimizes the atrocity of slavery. Language matters. My friend may have meant to be humorous, but the word slave driver by using the word slave driver at the community garden, he was inadvertently whitewashing the history of slavery. By processing this interaction, I will be better prepared next time someone says something that perpetuates white supremacy. It also helps me to practice what I would like to say so that I have the language to express myself. My even more practiced self would have liked to say, when I hear you say, slave driver, my body responds by feeling a hurt in my belly because owning another person is so wrong. I am curious what conversation would have followed after that statement. R3 stands for Race, Racism, and Relationship. It is an offering at this church and is one opportunity to learn, ask questions, and have a dialogue with other people to better understand yourself and the society we live in. It is a place where we can work together to dismantle racism. I started showing up, being vulnerable, and noticing some of my unconscious biases. Now, I am able to challenge myself to not worry so much about saying the wrong thing, but when I notice racism, but rather to say something and start a conversation. It is through a repeated practice that I believe we will realize our 8th principle of journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community. By our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. When I started this journey, I would never have guessed that I would be here today. this moment of telling you about my experience. For one thing, I shy away from public speaking. But by attending R3 and other anti-racism offerings in the safe space of this church, I have worked through the uncomfortableness of talking about racism. Thus, I felt prepared to encourage you to join in this journey of anti-racism work so you too can feel comfortable starting conversations and developing relationships with others.
Thank you, Sonia. So we've heard from only a few of the kinds of groups that you can get connected with here at First Unitarian. However long or short you've been a part of our community, I invite you to think about what kind of small group might be the right part of the right next part of the path of your journey and your spiritual development. Perhaps you are, in fact, new to this community, and so joining a monthly Soul Matters group will be just the thing to get you to know a handful of other Unitarian Universalists and explore the monthly themes of our church together. Or maybe you've been in Soul Matters for a while and you're ready to make that bigger commitment and go deep with UU Wellspring. Maybe you're seeking specific spiritual practices to sustain you, and you want to check out some of the Unitarian Buddhist fellowship offerings like the Monday night meditation that Paul talked about, or Tai Chi on Thursday mornings. Or maybe you're more drawn to earth-centered and seasonally bound rituals of our new and emerging pagan group. And maybe, like Sonia, you're excited by racism, and relationship because it is high time to develop the skills and to start interrupting racism, courageously starting conversations and leaning into relationship, exploring the deep spiritual work of dismantling racism in our institutions as well as in our own hearts. Whatever your spirit calls you into this next year, I invite you to find it here at First Unitarian. I'm always available to help you get connected to any of these offerings. You can speak to these and other folks who have participated in our many small groups and adult spiritual development offerings here at First Unitarian. Please join me now in our closing hymn, number 298, Wake Now My Senses.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel a deep power Make now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiant tears. Make now my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
Please remain standing as you are willing and able for our chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. In Unitarian Universalism, there is no one path up the mountain. We're not even convinced that there is just one mountain, truth be told. Yet the path remains ever before you in the direction of your heart. May we enthusiastically join one another on our journeys in mutual support and love. Go in peace, and blessed be.